Good evening, YouTube. I hope you're all having a good day. I just wanted to do a follow-up video on my previous XRP video and how they may bypass the banks. Just to make clear that I'm not a financial advisor, I'm just a guy on the internet. I have no financial background, but I just happen to follow financial news and also crypto news on a very regular basis. So I feel like I have some information that I may want to share with you. So first off, I just wanted to just cover something that is just happening just now. And as you can see, XRP has just dropped significantly to 21 cents. I would say and make very clear to you that you would be absolutely crazy to sell at that price. I think the worst thing you could do at this point is to sell. In fact, even if you've lost quite a bit, I would recommend that potentially this might be a good point to purchase some more. But what I would do is I would wait for the price to settle and then average in on a bit more XRP going forwards. So moving on, I just wanted to just show you something here, and I just wanted to just follow the trail of where I'm going with this. So as you can see, this is the US debt clock. And at the moment, the US stands at 22 and almost a half trillion dollars, which is more than their GDP. And then, as you can see, all the other countries are not doing so well either, especially Japan. Their debt is absolutely ridiculous, and all the other countries are doing pretty bad also. And just to put this into perspective, I mean, I know the US GDP is 21.5 trillion, but if you look at the debt, 22.5, you could add up almost, apart from maybe China, you could add up the GDP of all these other countries and it will probably equal the same amount of debt as the US currently holds. So that is absolutely crazy. Just one more thing I wanted to point out actually is Turkey, they're not doing very well at the moment. The Turkish lira has just dropped in value, but you can see their GDP to national debt is nowhere near as bad compared to the US. So just to keep that in mind. So, okay, the US is in massive debt. The next thing I wanted to just quickly cover is car loans. So the US currently, just as a brief look, 44% of American adults, which is nearly half the US population, have car loans, which they are paying obviously on a monthly basis. I can imagine a lot of people will be refinancing as and when they cannot afford to pay for their car bills anymore. So this data is actually dating from 2017, so it's not even the most recent information that we have. And that accounts for almost, coming up to 110 million accounts. So that is an enormous amount of debt that is held by the consumer. That's not even counting in mortgages, daily charges that you may have on food and necessities, gas, electricity, which of course, due to the trade war, some of that will cause price increases, which is going to be an even higher squeeze on individuals' ability to be able to make purchases that they might consider as a luxury. So I then went to have a look at how the US economy is going. So you can see I'll put in US economic news. So I had to put that in because I'm a resident of the UK. So when I type in the news for the UK, the only thing that comes up is Brexit. So just looking at the US economy, you can see that consumer spending accounts for 70% of the US economic activity. Now looking at this starts to ring alarm bells in my head, mainly due to because a lot of Americans, almost half, have car loans. Plus, due to the trade war, you're going to have even higher costs for food, anything that's made out of a raw material that isn't manufactured in the US and they have to import it in. There's a huge implications around this. Also, there'll be reduced sales of American products within China, which means lower production volumes, which means higher costs. So generally speaking, we'll be seeing higher costs for many products in the US, especially if we're accounting for the fact that a lot of these products are manufactured in China. And I can imagine instead of manufacturers actually moving back to the US, I can see that they'll probably end up just waiting out this period of uncertainty and a bit of a storm, and they'll probably wait for the American elections next year and hope that somebody else gets elected instead of Trump. So moving on, keeping in mind that we have a huge amount of car loans, a huge amount of debt. Moving on to China. So China says they won't devalue their currency anymore. I don't know if you heard, but China has purposely reduced the value of, or devalued the value of their currency in light of the extra tariffs that have been put in place. So this is bad for the Chinese consumer. You know, they will have to pay more in order to get the same items as they did a couple of months ago. And the reason why they've done this is because of exports. So there are higher tariffs, so higher cost to export goods to the US. But at the same time, they tried to counteract this by having a devalued currency. So basically, it costs less money to make something, which then counteracts some of the costs that go towards a tariff. And as you can see by the title of this article from Forbes, they say that the Chinese won't devalue their currency any further, but the market might do that anyway. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So finally, if you just saw my previous video where I was talking about these chat applications, which will be the next banks of the world, you can see we have WeChat here. So currently they exceed 1 billion transactions in 2018. And if I can find it here, which I'd found earlier, so WeChat followers grew by 1.098 billion in December 2018. That's an enormous amount of people. I mean, to put that into perspective, please correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, but I think that's probably the entire population of the US continent, both north and south. It might even be extending to also include Europe. Looking at this, the currency that is currently used in WeChat is the Chinese yuan. But keeping in mind, the Chinese are devaluing their currency. And when they devalue their currency, this is going to annoy a lot of middle-class Chinese individuals. I mean, think about it. You've been saving your money, which a lot of Chinese people are good at doing. And suddenly your currency has been devalued. And it means that when you're traveling abroad, you have to work harder in order to be able to get the same out of it. So what this potentially could move to, and if the currencies in this WeChat, is pegged to the Chinese yuan, then at some point I can imagine there'll be a tipping point, and the Chinese consumer may say, okay, enough is enough, and we need to start thinking about where else am I going to keep my money in order to keep my wealth or the value that I have, because the value of my Chinese yuan is dropping on a regular basis. So at some point, and I think what will happen is essentially a bank is going to falter. This is going to have a ripple effect across many banks across the world. This is going to have an impact on currency, and I can see some currencies being devalued at an enormous rate, and I can see some currencies going up in value. So I don't see the US dollar falling, because currently it's a world reserve currency, and I can imagine a lot of the countries will start moving towards the US dollar. But what will happen is I can see that people will start hedging into other assets such as gold, silver, and Bitcoin. Um, and this is where people will start saving their money. And potentially going forward, if the Chinese yuan devalues any further, then individuals will be looking to see where they can potentially hedge their cash, which would be Bitcoin. And when they move to Bitcoin, then they may want to say, okay, I want to start, sending money to my friends, my family. I want to start making some small purchases. And, all due to respect to Bitcoin, I love that currency. It started an industry that is absolutely incredible. But for day-to-day transactions, it's not very good because the transaction costs are quite expensive considering the transaction cost for Bitcoin. So the next big currency that you end up using is probably XRP. So just moving on to that, I just wanted to just very cover some news about the recent dump. So there's just been an update from bakkt, and they have 147 Bitcoin in terms of percentage change, and you can see here's an enormous drop. So I just wanted to make a point. Let me just go to this last chart here, and this guy, Crypto Bullet. Looking at this chart, you can see he's compared 2017 to 2019, and as you can see, there's been an enormous drop below the 147 EMA, and as you can see, over a couple of days, it's dropped significantly. I couldn't tell you percentages, but then it's increased exponentially afterwards, and I genuinely think this is going to happen again. The recent increase in the price of Bitcoin and how much it's risen over the last couple of months or throughout 2019, I can see this dumping and then increasing exponentially higher afterwards, especially with the release of bakkt that was happened a couple of days ago. So in light of things not looking very good at the moment, I don't think this is something that is going to last very long at all. I think it's just going to be a blip, and it's going to just shoot even higher, and it's going to be a point where we now officially starts the next bull run. So I think really, although things look quite bad, I think it's a time to celebrate. And again, not financial advice, but if you decided to buy XRP, I have to say that it's an excellent opportunity to get yourself a bargain, including a lot of the other cryptocurrencies that are out there, maybe some of the other top 10s that are available right now. So with that, I just wanted to say, okay, yeah, we're going to have, a lot of these chat apps. So WeChat is pegged to the yuan. WhatsApp will probably have something pegged with Libra, from Facebook. And I can imagine that's probably going to be pegged to various currencies around the world. But with the current situation of the banks, of car loans, of consumer debt, I generally think that these apps will start looking at alternative currencies. And the first currency they'll probably look at is Bitcoin, because it's the most well known and it's the largest. And then the next in terms of transactions will be XRP. So it'll be an exciting future. I don't think this is going to happen tomorrow. I can imagine if I had to put an estimate on it, I'll probably say about 2 years. And we'll have to wait and see. But I can tell you now, crypto isn't going anywhere. And I think it's going to be here for a very long period of time. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you had any questions, then please feel free to let me know in the comment section. And please don't forget to hit that bell notification and subscribe and like this video. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.